My brother stopped speaking on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were the day Mom used to make meatloaf before she got sick, before the hospice nurses came, before the house learned how to hold quiet like a held breath. Daniel didn't announce it. He just sat down at the kitchen table that morning, looked at the eggs I'd burned, and didn't say a single word. Not good morning, not thanks, not the small jab he always made about my cooking, the one where he'd ask if I'd learned arson at culinary school. He chewed. He drank his coffee. He left. I told myself he was tired. Daniel had always been the kind of tired that lived behind his eyes. The engineer's tired. The kind that came from solving problems no one had told him to solve. He was 34. I was 26. The age gap between us had narrowed in the last year, the way it does when a parent dies, and the surviving children become something closer to equals. Two people on the same side of a thinning line. I'm calling myself Owen for the sake of this. Owen Halloran. My brother was Daniel. Our mother had been Marion, and the house we shared on the edge of Pine Brook County had been hers. A 2-story farmhouse with a shed in the back that Dad had built before he disappeared into a different woman's life in 1998. The shed was where Daniel started spending all his time, 5 days before the outbreak, though I wouldn't know to call it an outbreak until much later. To me, that first week, it was just my brother going strange. By Wednesday afternoon, I noticed the lights in the shed didn't go off. I noticed the orange extension cord running from the back porch outlet, snaking across the dead grass, disappearing under the shed door. I noticed Daniel had moved the propane tank from the grill. I noticed because I went to grill burgers on Wednesday night, and the tank was gone. And Daniel walked past me in the yard like I was a piece of furniture he'd already accounted for. "Daniel," I said. "Hey, the propane." He stopped. He looked at me. His mouth opened, just slightly, like a man considering whether language was worth the cost. Then he closed it and kept walking. I want to be honest about what I felt then, because everything that comes later depends on it. I felt embarrassed. I felt small. I felt like the younger brother who'd flunked out of his second semester at State, who'd come home to figure things out, who'd been figuring things out for 19 months while Daniel paid the property taxes and pretended not to notice. I felt like a guest in a house I'd grown up in. And underneath all of that, threaded through the embarrassment like a wire under skin, I felt afraid. Not of him, for him. That night, I watched the shed from my bedroom window. The light bled around the door frame in a thin gold rectangle. Around 2 a.m, I heard the generator kick on, and I understood that he wasn't just using the extension cord anymore. He'd brought in backup. He'd brought in redundancy. I went downstairs in my socks. The kitchen smelled like cold coffee and the faint chemical edge of something I couldn't name, something that had drifted in through the screen door from the yard. I stood at the back door and looked at the shed and thought, he's having a breakdown. He's grieving Mom. He's working through something. I'll give him a week. Then a sound came from the woods behind the property. Not loud. A single dry crack, the kind a foot makes when it finds the wrong branch. I stared into the dark beyond the shed, into the tree line where the moonlight stopped, and the dark stared back. And I told myself it was a deer. It wasn't a deer, but I didn't know that yet. I went back to bed. Thursday, Daniel came inside at 6 a.m. and went directly to the basement. He didn't shower. He didn't change. His hands were black with grease up to the wrists, and there was a smear of something darker on the collar of his work shirt, something that had dried in a curve, like a thumbprint pressed and dragged. I sat on the 3rd stair from the top and listened to him moving boxes down there. Heavy boxes, the scrape of cardboard on concrete, the clink of glass, the unmistakable rattle of shotgun shells in their plastic sleeves. We owned one shotgun. It had been our father's, and Daniel had kept it cleaned and unloaded in a case under his bed for as long as I could remember. The shells lived in a coffee can in the basement. I knew the sound of them because Daniel had taught me to load it the summer I turned 15. In case, he'd said, and never finished the sentence. I went to the kitchen and made coffee and waited. When he came up, he was carrying a duffel bag I didn't recognize. He set it by the back door. He looked at me, and for the first time in 2 days, his eyes actually focused on my face. He held the look long enough that I felt seen in a way I hadn't been seen since Mom's funeral. When he'd put his hand on the back of my neck during the eulogy and squeezed once, hard, the way you squeeze a person to remind them they're still in the room with you. "Owen," he said. One word. The first word in 48 hours. "Yeah," I said. My voice cracked. I hated that. He didn't say anything else. He picked up the duffel and went out to the shed. I followed him. I told myself I was going to demand answers, that I was going to be the adult about it, that I was going to say something like, "You can't just stop talking to the only family you have left." But when I got to the shed door, it was already closed, and I could hear the soft mechanical murmur of something turning inside, a fan maybe, or a pump. And I stood there, with my hand raised to knock, and I didn't knock. I went around to the side of the shed instead. There was a small window there, high up, that had been painted over years ago when Dad used the shed as a dark room. The paint had cracked in one corner. I discovered this when I was 12, spying on Daniel building a model rocket. And the crack had gotten bigger over the years, the way cracks do. I stepped onto an overturned planter and pressed my eye to the gap. Daniel had built a room inside the shed. That's the only way I can describe it. The walls were lined with sheet plastic, taped at every seam. A workbench ran along one side, covered with tools I recognized and tools I didn't. There were 3 5-gallon water jugs stacked in a corner, a folding cot, a camp stove, a printed sheet of paper pinned to the plastic wall, too far away to read. And in the center of the room, on a square of cardboard, my brother was kneeling next to a sealed metal container roughly the size of a microwave, doing something to its lid with a screwdriver, his lips moving like he was counting. I climbed down. I sat in the dead grass behind the shed. I felt the cold come up through my jeans, and I tried to make sense of it, and I couldn't. Daniel wasn't a prepper. He'd voted twice. He owned a Subaru. He read books about urban planning. Whatever he was building, he hadn't decided to build it on a whim. He'd decided to build it, and then he'd stopped speaking, because he didn't want to lie to me about it. And he didn't know how to tell the truth. That was the moment I understood my brother was afraid. And my brother was never afraid. I went back inside and locked the door. Friday morning, the news got strange. Not loud strange, quiet strange. I was scrolling through my phone over cereal, and there was a small item on a regional news site about a hospital in Marsden, 2 counties over, being placed on operational lockdown for what they were calling a respiratory event. 3 paragraphs. No follow-up. I scrolled past it twice before I scrolled back. I clicked through to the hospital's social media. The last post was a photo of a fundraiser bake sale from the previous Saturday. Smiling nurses behind a folding table of cupcakes. The comments underneath had turned. People asking about family members. People asking why no one was answering the phones. A woman named Carla writing, in all caps, that her husband had gone in for a kidney stone and she hadn't heard from him in 19 hours, and the front doors were locked from the inside. I put my phone face down on the table. Outside, a car drove past the house too fast, then another one. Then a pickup truck with a mattress strapped haphazardly to the roof. The kind of load you make when you're not thinking about how it looks, only about whether it'll hold. I watched the truck disappear around the bend in our road. And I thought about how Pine Brook County is the kind of place people leave when they're going somewhere, not the kind of place people drive through on the way to anywhere else. Daniel came in the back door. He had a streak of dirt across his forehead and a bandage on his left hand that I hadn't seen him put on. He went to the sink and washed the dirt off, and then turned around and looked at me. And I could tell he'd decided something. "We're leaving Sunday morning," he said. "Pack one bag, clothes for warm and cold, your medication, nothing sentimental." "Daniel, what is happening?" "Sunday morning," he said. 5 a.m. We take the Subaru. We go north." "North where?" "Mom's cousin had a place in Vermont. I have the keys." "Mom's cousin died in 2011. "I know." He held my eyes for a moment, and then he looked at the back door, at the tree line beyond it, and his jaw worked once like he was chewing on a word and decided to swallow it. "What's in the shed, Daniel?" "Something I hope we don't need." "That's not an answer?" "No," he said. "It isn't." He went upstairs. I heard the shower run. I heard him in the linen closet pulling things down. I heard the careful, methodical sounds of a man who had been rehearsing this in his head for longer than 5 days, who had been rehearsing it maybe for years. And I realized, sitting at the kitchen table with the cereal going soft in my bowl, that my brother had been preparing for something specific, and he had not told me, because telling me would have meant admitting he believed it would actually happen. The phone on the counter buzzed. An emergency alert. I picked it up. Pine Brook County Advisory. Residents are advised to remain indoors until further notice. Avoid contact with individuals exhibiting signs of acute confusion, aggression, or unresponsiveness. Do not approach. Call 911. I read it twice. I read the word aggression 3 times. I set the phone down very carefully, the way you set down something that might shatter. Outside, in the side yard, the neighbor's dog had started barking. The Petersons' Labrador, a black one named Moose, who'd been barking at squirrels for 9 years and had never once sounded like this. This was a sound that started in the dog's chest and stayed there, low and continuous. The kind of sound a dog makes when it has decided something is in the yard that should not be in the yard. I went to the window. I pulled back the curtain. There was a man standing at the edge of our property, just past the mailbox, facing the house. He was not moving. He was just standing. I watched him. He didn't blink. I called for Daniel, and my voice came out wrong, thin and high, and Daniel was down the stairs in 15 seconds, with the shotgun in his hand, loaded, the safety already off. He didn't ask what was wrong. He went to the window beside me and looked. The man at the mailbox was wearing a postal uniform, half of it. The shirt was buttoned crooked, and one shoe was missing, and his left arm hung at an angle that wasn't broken so much as forgotten, as if he'd stopped knowing the arm was there. His head was tilted slightly, like a bird listening for something underground. Even from this distance, I could see that his mouth was open. "That's Carl," Daniel said. "Carl Friel. He's been our mailman for 9 years. "Daniel, I know." "Daniel, what is wrong with him?" "I know, Owen." The dog had stopped barking. I noticed that next. The dog had stopped, and the silence that replaced the barking was worse, because in the silence I could hear, faintly, a sound from the man at the mailbox. A wet sound. A breathing sound. Not labored, just thick. Daniel took my elbow and moved me away from the window. He moved me like a piece of furniture, gently, with purpose. He drew the curtain. He went to the front door and turned the deadbolt. And then he turned the second deadbolt he'd installed last week that I'd assumed was about packages getting stolen. He went to the back door and did the same. He went to the kitchen and pulled down the blinds I didn't remember him installing. And I understood, watching him, that the entire house had been quietly fortified around me while I'd been sulking about the propane tank. "Sit down," he said. I sat at the kitchen table. He sat across from me. He put the shotgun on the table between us, barrel pointed at the wall. He folded his hands. He looked at me, and his face did something I hadn't seen since the night we got the call about Mom. A small collapse around the eyes. An admission. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For not telling you. I thought I had more time. I thought I had maybe a month. I was wrong." "Daniel, what is happening?" "I don't know exactly. Nobody does. But I have a friend who works at the CDC field office in Atlanta. And we went to grad school together. And 3 weeks ago, he called me from his car and asked me if I still had the property in Vermont, and I knew." "You knew what?" "That something was coming." He didn't say what. He couldn't. But he called me from his car, Owen. He called me from his car instead of his office, and he asked about the property. And he said if I were you, I would start now. And then he hung up, and I tried to call him back the next day, and his number was disconnected. I stared at him. 3 weeks? Yes. You knew for 3 weeks? I didn't know. I suspected. I prepared. I thought I would have time to tell you when I was sure. I was trying to be sure before I scared you. And the shed? He hesitated. The shed is a precaution. I'll explain on the way. We are not staying in this house another night. You said Sunday. That was before Carl. I looked toward the window. I couldn't see Carl anymore, but I could feel him out there. The wrongness of him. The way you feel a draft from a door you didn't know was open. "Okay," I said. It came out smaller than I meant it to. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed the back of my neck once, hard, the way he had at the funeral. And I felt the world realign around that gesture, around the single fact that my brother was still my brother, even if I didn't know him as well as I'd thought. We started packing. The shed was not what I expected, and it was exactly what I expected. And somehow both of those things were true at the same time. Daniel walked me out at dusk, after we'd loaded the Subaru with the bags and the water and the cooler of frozen meals he'd been stockpiling in the basement freezer for a month without me noticing. He had me carry a flashlight. He carried the shotgun. We crossed the yard in a kind of crouch I would not have known how to perform an hour earlier. And I understood my body was already learning the new rules. Inside, under the bare bulb, the plastic-sheeted room was smaller than it had looked through the window. The metal container I'd seen him kneeling beside was open now, and inside it were 3 things: a satellite phone, a stack of laminated paper maps, and a sealed glass vial of clear liquid in a foam cradle. "What is that?" I said, pointing at the vial. "I don't know," Daniel said. "You don't know?" "My friend sent it, 2 weeks ago, by overnight courier. There was a note. The note said if things get bad enough that you're opening this, break the seal, take half, give the other half to whoever is with you." That was all it said. "Did you break it?" "No." "Are you going to?" "Not yet." Not until I understand what it is. Maybe never. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe my friend was having a breakdown. I don't know, Owen. I have not slept in 5 days because I don't know. He sat down on the cot. He put the shotgun across his knees. He looked older than 34 under that bulb, older than I'd ever seen him. And I realized that he had been carrying this alone for 3 weeks because he had been trying to protect me from carrying it. And that the protection had cost him something I could see now, sitting on him like a weight. I should have told you, he said. Yes. I'm sorry. I know. He stood up. He picked up the metal container by its handle. He nodded toward the door. We were halfway across the yard when the screaming started. It came from the Petersons' house, 2 properties over, past the line of pines. It was a woman's scream, and then a man's voice shouting something I couldn't make out. And then the sound of glass breaking. A window, probably, a big one. The Petersons had a sunroom with floor-to-ceiling glass that Mrs. Peterson had been so proud of when they'd built it in 2019. Daniel grabbed my arm. We ran the last 20 feet to the back door. He shoved me inside, came in behind me, locked the door, and then we stood in the dark kitchen, breathing, listening. The screaming stopped. That was somehow worse than its continuation. It cut off mid-sound, the way a radio cuts off when the cord is yanked from the wall. We can't wait until morning, Daniel said. We go now. It's dark. That's better. Headlights only when we have to. The interstate will be a parking lot by sunrise. We take the county roads. We can be at the border by dawn if we move. I nodded. I could not feel my hands. We carried the metal container out to the Subaru. We checked the gas. We checked the spare. Daniel opened the driver's side door, and then he stopped and he turned, and he looked back at the house we'd grown up in, the house Mom had died in, the house Daniel had paid the taxes on for 19 months while I figured things out. He looked at it for maybe 4 seconds. Then he got in the car. I got in the passenger seat. I closed the door as quietly as I could. The dome light, which I'd never noticed before, seemed obscenely bright, and Daniel reached up and pressed it off with his thumb. He turned the key. The engine caught. We rolled down the gravel driveway with the lights off, and the house got smaller in the side mirror. And then it was gone behind the trees, and I never saw it again. The county road was empty for the first 6 miles. That was the part that scared me most. Pine Brook County had never been busy, but it had also never been empty. Not at 8 in the evening on a Friday, not with the diners on Route 9 lit up, and the Methodist Church bingo letting out, and the gas station at the Maddox intersection always doing some kind of business. We passed the diner. The lights were on. The parking lot was full. The front door was open, and no one was visible inside. Daniel didn't slow down. We don't stop, he said, for anyone, for any reason, until we hit the state line. Do you understand me, Owen? Yes. Say it back. We don't stop. Good. The headlights were still off. The moon was 3/4 full, and the road was a pale ribbon between the dark masses of the pines, and Daniel drove it the way a man drives a road he's memorized as a child, by instinct and by the shape of the curves. I realized he had been planning this route for 3 weeks. He had been driving it in his head every night while I slept. Around mile 7, we came up behind a car stopped in the middle of the road. Driver's door open, engine running, headlights cutting a tunnel through the dark ahead of it. No driver visible. Daniel slowed. He pulled around it carefully in the opposite lane, and as we passed, I looked into the cone of those headlights, and I saw what the driver had stopped for. A child, maybe 6, standing in the road, facing the car, not moving. The child was wrong. I knew it the way I had known Carl was wrong. There was a stillness in the child's body that no living 6-year-old has ever possessed. Her head was tilted the same way Carl's had been. Her dress was wet down the front, and the wetness was dark. And she was barefoot on the asphalt that had to be cold this time of year. Daniel kept driving. He did not look at the child. His knuckles on the wheel went white and stayed white for the next mile. "That was a kid," I said. "I know. That was a kid, Daniel. I know what it was, Owen. We could have." "No. You didn't even look." I looked enough to know I couldn't help her. I looked enough to know that stopping would not have helped her, and it would have killed us. Do you want to die on the side of County Route 4 because we tried to be heroes for something that is not what it looks like? It looked like a child. It is not a child anymore. I didn't answer. I watched the road. I watched the trees. I watched Daniel's hands on the wheel. And I felt, for the first time in our lives, that there was a version of my brother I had not met yet. A version that had been built privately in a shed over 3 weeks. And that this version was the one driving the car. And the one I had grown up with was sitting somewhere in the back, watching, hoping the new version got it right. We crossed the county line at 9:17. The sign was still standing. Daniel exhaled. "Talk to me," he said. "About anything. Just keep talking. I need you to keep talking." I didn't know what to say. I started talking about Mom's garden, the tomatoes she'd never gotten to plant the last spring. The way she'd labeled all the seed packets in her looping handwriting and left them on the kitchen windowsill. And how I'd found them after the funeral and hadn't been able to throw them away. I talked until my mouth was dry, and Daniel listened. And somewhere around mile 30, I noticed his hands had loosened on the wheel, just slightly, and I understood that I had been doing for him what he had been doing for me my entire life. Anchoring. Reminding him there was still a person in the car. We drove north. The first checkpoint was at the bridge over the Seneca River, just past midnight. We saw the lights from a mile out, the red and blue strobing through the trees, and Daniel killed our headlights, which he had finally turned on 20 miles back. And we coasted to a stop on the shoulder behind a stand of scrub oak. "Stay here," he said. "Daniel." "Stay here. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you take the wheel, you turn around, you go back to the last junction, and you take the eastern route. The map in the glove box. The route is marked. Do you hear me?" "I can drive a stick now," I said, stupidly, because it was the only true thing I could think of to give him. He almost smiled. He got out. He crossed the road in a crouch and disappeared into the trees toward the bridge. I sat in the car. I counted to 60. I counted to 60 again. I tried to count to 60 a third time and lost track at 38 because a sound came from the trees on the passenger side of the car. A soft rustling, the kind of rustling a deer makes, which was the same lie I had told myself in the yard 4 nights ago. I turned my head slowly. There was something at the edge of the tree line, lower than a person, on all fours, moving in a way that was not how 4-legged things move, more like a person who had forgotten that the upright option existed. It paused. It tilted its head. The moonlight caught its eyes, and they did not catch the light back the way an animal's eyes do. They absorbed it. I did not breathe. I did not move. I had not locked the doors. I had not locked the doors because Daniel had not locked them, and I had not thought to. The thing at the tree line took one step forward, then another. It was 30 feet from the car, 25. Daniel came back at a sprint. He came out of the woods on the driver's side, threw himself into the seat, slammed the door, and had the car in reverse before I could speak. The thing at the tree line lunged. It hit the front grille with an impact I felt in my teeth, rolled off, and was already getting up as Daniel cut the wheel and accelerated backward down the road. "The bridge is gone," Daniel said. His voice was level, wrong level. "They blew it. The checkpoint is on our side. They are not letting anyone through. They are not even talking. They shot at me, Owen. They saw me at 50 yards, and they fired warning shots, and one of them was not a warning." "Daniel." "We take the eastern route." "Daniel, there was one of them at the tree line. I saw it. It was right there. I didn't lock the door." "I know. I should have. That was my fault." "It looked at me." He glanced at me. He reached over with his right hand and put it on my forearm, briefly, and his hand was shaking. "I know," he said. "I am sorry. I am going to do better." He took us east. The map in the glove box was hand-drawn, in pencil, with the kind of detail that takes weeks to compile. Back roads, Forest Service roads, a few places marked with small X's that I didn't ask about. We drove for 3 hours without seeing another car. Around 3 in the morning, we pulled into a closed campground Daniel had marked on the map, and we slept in the car in the back of the parking lot, with the doors locked and the shotgun across his lap. I dreamed about the child in the road. In the dream, I got out of the car, and I crossed to her, and I knelt down, and she looked up at me, and her face was Daniel's face, 20 years younger. And she opened her mouth and asked me why I had not come sooner. I woke up before dawn. Daniel was already awake. He had not slept. He was watching the road through the windshield, and his eyes were red, and he did not look at me, but he said, "We need to talk about the vial." He took the metal container out of the back seat and set it on the dashboard between us. The campground was still in the gray light before sunrise, and the windows of the Subaru were fogged from our breathing. And Daniel wiped a clear circle on the windshield with his sleeve before he opened the container. The vial was still in its foam cradle. The liquid inside was the color of nothing, or maybe the color of water if water had been thinking about something for a long time. "My friend's name was Matteo," Daniel said. "I should tell you that, because if anything happens to me, you should know whose work you're carrying. Matteo Reyes. He was a virologist. We met in a public health policy class my second year of grad school. He was the smartest person I ever met." "Was? I don't know. I haven't been able to reach him. But the note that came with the vial was in his handwriting. And the wax seal on the container was his grandmother's, which he used to use as a joke when he sent me birthday cards. So it was him. Whatever this is, he sent it. What do you think it is?" "I think it's either a vaccine or a marker." "What's a marker?" "Something that doesn't stop you from being infected. Something that makes you stay you longer after you are, or makes you visible to other people who have also taken it. Or both. I don't know. I'm guessing. He didn't tell me." "Why didn't he tell you?" "Because if he told me, and I told someone, and that someone told someone, and the wrong person heard, he would have been killed. He was sending me something he was not allowed to send. The fact that he sent it at all means he believed I was going to need it. The fact that he didn't include instructions means he believed I was smart enough to know when." I stared at the vial. "You said take half and give half to whoever is with you." "Yes." "That's me." "Yes. So we should take it." He didn't answer. "Daniel, We should take it. I don't know what it does, Owen. You said it might keep us human longer. It might. It might also do nothing. It might make us sick. It might mark us in a way that draws them. I don't know. I have been turning this over in my head for 2 weeks. And the only honest answer I have is that I don't know. Then why did you keep it? He looked at me. He looked at me the way he had looked at me across the kitchen table after Carl appeared at the mailbox. That small collapse around the eyes. Because if it came down to it, and one of us got bitten, I wanted to have something. I didn't want to have nothing. Even if it was a coin flip, even if it was worse than a coin flip, I wanted to have something to give you. To give me. Yes. Not to take yourself. He didn't answer that either. He closed the container. I'm going to make a decision, he said. Today, before we get back on the road. But I want you to know something first. Whatever I decide, I'm not going to decide it without telling you. I am done not telling you things. I owe you that. So if I decide we don't take it yet, I'll tell you why. And if I decide we do, I'll tell you that too. And you get a vote. You get a real vote. Do you understand? I nodded. My throat had closed. Okay, he said. He put the container back behind my seat. He started the engine. The Subaru coughed once, the way it had been coughing for 2 years, and then it caught, and we pulled out of the campground onto a service road I had never been on in my life. We had been driving for 15 minutes when we saw the woman. She was standing in the middle of the road, but unlike the child, unlike Carl, she was waving her arms. She was alive. She was a person. She was maybe 40, in jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. And as we slowed, I could see she was crying. The kind of crying that comes after you've stopped being able to manage it. Daniel slowed but did not stop. He pulled the car to the shoulder 20 feet from her and rolled his window down 2 inches. I have a kid in the car, she called. He's hurt. He's not bit. He fell. He hit his head. Please, please. I just need to get to a hospital. I don't know where. Where's the car? Daniel said. She pointed back behind her. A blue sedan was pulled into the trees, half off the road, hood crumpled against a pine. You hit a tree? There was something in the road. I swerved. Please. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I watched his face. I watched him calculating. And I watched him hate the calculation. And I watched him do it anyway. Owen, he said quietly, get the shotgun. Keep it pointed down. Keep your finger off the trigger. Get out with me. Stay 6 feet behind me. If I tell you to get back in the car, you get back in the car, and you lock the doors, yes? Yes. We got out. The woman saw the shotgun and put her hands up immediately, palms out, the universal gesture, and she was nodding, agreeing with something we hadn't asked her to agree to. I'm not. I swear to God, I'm not. Please. He's 8. His name is Theo. Please. Walk to the car, Daniel said. Slowly, I'm going to look at your son. Owen stays here. If anyone comes out of the trees, Owen will tell me. Yes? Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Daniel followed her. I stood by the Subaru with the shotgun pointed at the road. I watched my brother walk away from me toward a stranger's car in the woods. And I felt every second of every minute he had spent in the shed, teaching himself to be someone who could do this. I heard him at the car. I heard the woman opening the back door, talking softly. I heard Daniel say, Hey, Theo. Hey, buddy. I'm going to look at your head. Is that okay? And then there was a long quiet. And then Daniel came walking back, alone. And his face was the face of a man who has decided something and does not want to have decided it. The boy has a head injury, he said. He needs a hospital. We don't have one. The nearest one we know is functional is in Burlington, which is 6 hours from here on the route I planned. He won't make it 6 hours. He needs surgery, Owen. His left pupil is blown. What are we doing? There's a clinic in Hatcherville, 20 minutes east. If it's still operating, we drop them there. If it isn't, we leave them there anyway, because that's the closest thing to help they have. And we cannot take them with us. Why can't we take them with us? Because the cabin in Vermont has supplies for 2 people for 6 months, not 4. And because she's been crying for 20 minutes in the middle of a road. And her crying is going to bring something. Daniel. I know what I sound like, Owen. I know. But this is the world now. We can give them a ride to a clinic. We cannot give them our lives. Yes? I didn't answer. Yes? Yes, I said. I hated the word in my mouth. We loaded them into the back of the Subaru. The boy was small and limp and breathing too slowly. And the woman, whose name turned out to be Lila, held him in her lap and pressed her sweatshirt against the side of his head. And she did not stop thanking us. Not for the entire 20 minutes. Not until we pulled into the parking lot of the Hatcherville Family Clinic and saw that the windows were broken and the front door was hanging from one hinge. Lila started screaming, not loudly, a thin, choked screaming, into the top of her son's head, the kind of sound a person makes when they have run out of options and have not yet accepted it. Daniel sat with his hands on the wheel. He did not turn around. There's a fire station, he said, 2 miles from here. Sometimes they have EMTs. Sometimes they have supplies. Sometimes, Lila said. It's what I have. I'm sorry. He drove. The fire station, when we reached it, was also empty. The bay doors open, one of the trucks missing, the other one still parked inside with all 4 tires slashed. There was a body on the apron, a man in a fireman's coat. Daniel did not let me look at it. We got out. Daniel walked through the bay carefully, the shotgun up, and came back with a duffel bag I recognized as a paramedic's kit. He brought it to the car. He knelt in the open door beside Lila and her son. I am not a doctor, he said. I took a wilderness EMT course 9 years ago. I am going to do what I can. It is not going to be enough. I want you to know that before I start, so that you can decide whether you want me to start. Lila looked at him. The 2 of them looked at each other for what felt like a very long time. Then she nodded. Daniel worked on the boy for 22 minutes. I stood by the car with a shotgun and watched the street, because someone had to, and because I could not watch him work. I heard the murmur of his voice, calm and continuous, talking the boy through things the boy could not hear. I heard him ask Lila to hold this, to press here, to count out loud with him. I heard him say more than once, "You're doing great, Theo. You're doing great, buddy." The boy died at 11:47 in the morning. I know because I looked at the dashboard clock when Daniel stopped talking. And the silence afterward had a different quality. And I knew before Lila started crying again. Daniel stayed kneeling in the open door for another minute. He closed the boy's eyes. He put his hand on Lila's hand. He said something to her I did not hear. Then he stood up, and he walked away from the car, and he walked around to the back of the fire station. And I heard him be sick into the gravel. I went to him. I put my hand on his back. He was bent at the waist, his hands on his knees, and his back was shaking. "I have never lost one before," he said. "I have not practiced medicine in 9 years, but in the course, in the field exercises, I did not lose one. I did not lose one, Owen." I know. I should have told her in the car. I should have told her there was no clinic. I let her hope for 20 minutes when I knew there was nothing there. You didn't know. I suspected. I should have said. I keep not telling people things, and people keep paying for it. Daniel. He stood up. He wiped his mouth on the back of his hand. He looked at me, and he looked like our father. The one time in my life he had ever looked like our father. And he said, "We have to leave her here. Daniel, there is no version of this where we take her with us. She just lost her son. She is going to break apart, and she is going to do it in our car. And we cannot drive and hold her at the same time, and the cabin will not feed her, and she will hate us inside of a week. The kind thing is to leave her here with the body and with the kid and to go. That's not kind. No, it isn't. But it is what I'm going to do. And I'm telling you, because I said I would tell you everything. And you get a vote." I looked at him. I looked at the car, at Lila's silhouette in the back seat. I looked at the empty street. "Drive," I said. We crossed into Vermont on a logging road that wasn't on any map but the one in Daniel's glove box, sometime after dark, on what I was almost certain was Sunday, though the days had begun to soften into each other. Daniel had not spoken much since the fire station. He had driven, and he had stopped when the car needed gas from the cans in the trunk. And he had eaten when I put food in front of him, and he had not slept. I drove the last 2 hours. He had taught me the manual transmission in a parking lot when I was 18. And I had not driven one since, and I was bad at it. And he sat in the passenger seat with his hand on the dash and did not correct me, did not flinch when I ground the gears, did not say anything except, once, "You're doing fine." The cabin was at the end of a dirt road that climbed for 1.5 miles through pines so close together they made a tunnel. It belonged, technically, to no one. Mom's cousin Hugh had died without a will, and the property had gone into a kind of legal limbo that Daniel, who understood these things, had been quietly maintaining for years through the payment of small taxes and the occasional necessary lie. The cabin itself was small. 2 rooms, a loft, a wood stove, a hand pump for water from a well that Daniel had personally recased the summer after Mom got her diagnosis. He had been preparing this place for longer than 3 weeks. I understood that as soon as we got inside. The pantry was stocked, the propane was full. There were 2 sleeping bags rated for winter on the loft. There were 3 boxes of ammunition in a metal cabinet under the kitchen sink. There was a hand-cranked radio on the windowsill and a journal on the kitchen table. And the journal was in Daniel's handwriting, and the first entry was dated 4 years ago. I sat down on the floor with the journal in my lap and read the first entry. Mom is going to die, probably within 2 years. Owen does not know how to take care of himself. I need to be ready for both of those things. I need to be ready for things that aren't even on the horizon yet. The world is fragile. I have always known the world is fragile. I'm going to start preparing, quietly. And I'm not going to tell anyone. Because telling people makes them think you are paranoid. And being thought paranoid will close the doors I need to keep open. I closed the journal. I held it on my lap for a long time. Daniel was at the kitchen sink, pumping water into a kettle. His back was to me. "You started this when Mom got diagnosed," I said. "Yes." "You knew something like this was coming." "I did not know this. I knew something. I have been preparing for something for a long time. This happens to be what something turned out to be. You never told me." "No. You let me think you were boring." He laughed. It was the first time I had heard him laugh since Tuesday. It was a small laugh. a single exhalation through his nose. But it was a laugh, and it cracked something open in the cabin that had been sealed shut. I am boring, Owen. The boring is the preparation. The preparation is the boring. He brought me a cup of tea. He sat down across from me on the floor, his back against the cabinet. We drank tea in a one-room cabin in Vermont while the world ended outside. And for about 10 minutes, the cabin was the entire world, and the entire world was okay. Then the hand-cranked radio on the windowsill, which Daniel had been charging while he made the tea, came on by itself because he had set it to scan. And a voice we did not know was saying numbers in a sequence that sounded almost, but not quite, like a code. We stopped drinking tea. We listened. The numbers repeated for 9 minutes. Then a man's voice came on, in English, and said, "If you are receiving this and you are not infected, the safe corridor is open until the 18th. After the 18th, the corridor will close. The corridor runs from the Champlain checkpoint to the staging area in Sherbrooke. Bring documentation if you have it. Do not bring anyone exhibiting symptoms. Repeat, do not bring anyone exhibiting symptoms. The corridor closes on the 18th. Then the numbers came back. Daniel looked at his watch. What's the date? I said. The 12th, he said. I think, maybe the 13th. I lost a day somewhere. 6 days. 6 days, if it's the 12th. 5 if it's the 13th. Are we going? He did not answer right away. He stood up. He went to the window. He looked out at the dark. I built this place to disappear into, he said. Not to use as a way station. The whole point of this cabin is that it is not on the way to anywhere. The whole point is that no one is going to come up that dirt road, because the dirt road does not lead anywhere worth going. If we go to the corridor, we go through populated areas. We go through checkpoints. We make ourselves visible. Visible is the thing I have spent 4 years trying not to be. And if we stay, we have food for 6 months. We have a well. We have firewood. We have a shotgun and 3 boxes of shells. We have each other. We have, in theory, the rest of our lives. If the rest of our lives turns out to be defined by a one-room cabin in Vermont. And the vial. And the vial, which I still have not opened. Daniel. He turned from the window. He looked at me. The cabin's single bulb made his face look the color of paper. The corridor announcement is the kind of thing a government says when it is trying to gather survivors into one place. Sometimes that means rescue. Sometimes that means containment. Sometimes that means a kind of containment that is indistinguishable from rescue until it is too late. I do not know which one this is. You don't trust it. I don't trust anything I cannot see. The cabin I can see. The cabin I built. The corridor is a voice on a radio. But if it's real, and we don't go, we miss it, and we live out the rest of our lives in this cabin knowing we missed it. I am aware of this. I have been aware of this for the length of that broadcast. We sat with it. The radio scanned past the numbers, found static, came back, scanned past again. Daniel reached over and turned it off. Vote, he said. What? I said, you got to vote. On the vial. You get a vote on this too. We go or we stay. I have my opinion. I want to know yours before I tell you mine. I thought about it. I thought about Lila in the back seat at the fire station. I thought about the child in the road. I thought about Mom. In the last week of her life, gripping the rail of the hospital bed and asking us not to leave the room. Not for any reason. Not even to use the bathroom. Because she was afraid she would die alone. I want to go, I said. Not because I think the corridor is real. Because I think if it is real, and we don't go, and one of us dies of a thing the corridor could have fixed, the other one of us will not survive what that does to him, whichever one of us it is. He looked at me for a long time. That's a better answer than mine, he said. What was yours? That I was tired, and the cabin was safer, and I wanted to stay. He stood up. He went to the metal cabinet under the sink. He started counting shells. We leave in the morning, he said. We didn't get to leave in the morning. Around 4 a.m., the dog started barking, and we did not own a dog. I sat up on the loft. Daniel was already at the window, the shotgun in his hands, his body angled so that his silhouette wouldn't cross the glass. He motioned to me without looking. Down, stay. The barking was coming from somewhere on the road below the cabin. It was a big dog, and it was hurt. And it was barking in the way that dogs bark when they have been doing it for a long time and are starting to lose the voice for it. I lay flat on the loft floor and listened. Then a man's voice, calling out, calling for help. Daniel did not move. The man got closer. He was coming up the dirt road. I could hear his footsteps now, uneven, dragging on one side. He was calling out as he came. Hello, hello, the cabin. I saw your light. I saw your light through the trees. Please, my dog is hurt. Daniel did not move. The man came into the clearing. I could see him through the loft window now, a wedge of him in the moonlight. He was alone. There was no dog. The barking had stopped at some point in the last minute, and I had not noticed. The man stood in the clearing. He was maybe 50. He was wearing a hunter's vest, and one of his hands was bandaged with something that had once been white. Hello? He called. Please, I know you're in there. I saw the light. Daniel raised the shotgun. He did not aim it at the man. He aimed it at the ground in front of the man. He spoke, and his voice was the voice he had used with Lila. Calm and continuous, and free of anything that might be mistaken for invitation. Sir, I need you to stop walking. I need you to stay where you are. I am going to ask you some questions. If you answer them honestly, we can talk about what happens next. If you lie to me, I will know, and we will not be able to help you. Do you understand? The man stopped. He raised his good hand. Yes. What happened to your hand? I cut it on a fence 3 days ago, climbing over. What kind of fence? Chain link, outside a pharmacy. I needed insulin. For my wife. I was trying to get insulin. Where is your wife? The man's face did something. It was the face of a man who has been asked a question whose answer he has not yet allowed himself to know. She didn't make it, he said. 2 days ago, she didn't make it. I am sorry. Please, I just need somewhere to sit. I have not slept. I have not. Please. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I could see his jaw working. I could see him doing the math I'd watched him do at the woman's car in the road, and at the fire station, and at the kitchen table when he had decided we were leaving on Sunday. Sir, I am going to leave a sleeping bag and 3 bottles of water and a can opener and 4 cans of food on the porch. I'm going to leave them in 5 minutes. While I am leaving them, you are going to stay exactly where you are. After I close the door, you are going to come get them, and you are going to take them, and you are going to walk back down the road. You are not going to stay on this property. I'm sorry. I cannot bring you inside. There is a fire station in Hatcherville, but it is empty. There is a clinic in Hatcherville, but it is empty. There is a corridor that opens at the Champlain checkpoint until the 18th. If you can make it there, you can make it through. I will draw you a map. You understand? The man started crying, quietly. He nodded. Daniel turned to me. "Owen," he said, "I need you to come down. I need you to help me pack a bag for him." I came down. We packed the bag. The man took the bag. He thanked us through the door. He walked back down the road, and we watched him from the loft window until the dark took him, and Daniel sat on the loft floor with his back against the wall and put his face in his hands. "I didn't ask him about the hand," I said. "I know. You didn't either. I know what's on his hand, Owen. It's not from offense. It's a bite. He knows it's a bite. He didn't say so because he wanted to come in. I didn't say so because I didn't want to make him say it. I gave him what I could give him. I can't give him more than that. He's going to turn. Yes, probably tomorrow. Maybe tonight. With our sleeping bag. With our sleeping bag." I sat down next to him. Our shoulders touched. We sat like that for a while. "I'm scared," I said. It was the first time I had said it out loud. "I know. I'm scared we're not going to make the corridor. I'm scared we are going to make the corridor, and it's going to be the wrong kind. I'm scared one of us is going to get bitten, and the other one is going to have to use the vial and not know what it does. I'm scared we are going to keep meeting people we cannot help, and that I'm going to get good at not helping them. I'm scared that I'm already getting good at it." Daniel was quiet. "You are not getting good at it," he finally said. "You are getting able to do it. Those are not the same thing. The day they become the same thing is the day I will tell you. And we will stop, and we will figure out how to be something else. But that is not today. Promise." "I promise." We did not sleep again. We packed the car at first light. Daniel took the journal off the kitchen table and put it in his bag. He took the vial off the shelf where he had set it the night before and put it in his coat pocket against his chest. He took the radio. He took the hand-drawn map of the route to the Champlain checkpoint that he had been keeping folded in the kitchen drawer since the first day he had bought the cabin. We locked the cabin. He locked it with 3 different locks, one of which he had installed himself, and the keys he put on a string and tied around his neck. "In case we come back," he said. "In case we come back," I said. We drove down the dirt road. At the bottom, where the dirt met the county road, we passed something on the shoulder that I made myself look at, because I had decided, somewhere in the loft last night, that I was going to start looking at things. It was the man. He was on his side, in our sleeping bag, and he was not moving. And there was a small entry wound at his temple, and a revolver in his hand that he must have been carrying the whole time we were talking to him. And I understood that he had known what he was. And he had decided, and he had done it himself. Before it could do it for him, Daniel saw what I was looking at. He slowed. He stopped the car. He got out. He stood over the man for a minute. Then he knelt down, and he closed the man's eyes. And he picked up the revolver and put it in his coat pocket on the opposite side from the vial. And he came back to the car. "He saved us a bullet," he said. And he saved himself the worst part. I hope someone remembers his name. I never asked it. Neither did I. That's on me, not you. He drove. The road climbed out of the valley. Behind us, the cabin disappeared into the pines, and the man in the sleeping bag disappeared into the dawn. And we drove toward a checkpoint that was either rescue or its opposite. And there was no way to know until we got there. We reached the staging area outside the Champlain checkpoint on the afternoon of what Daniel was almost certain was the 17th. The road in had been marked every 2 miles with hand-painted plywood signs nailed to trees, white paint on green backgrounds. Corridor this way. No symptomatic, no exceptions. The closer we got, the more cars we passed, and the more of them were not abandoned. And the more we understood that the corridor was real. The staging area was a high school football field. Buses had been brought in. Tents had been erected on the running track. There were soldiers, in uniforms I did not recognize, with patches that said things in 2 languages. There were medics in white tents at the field's edge, screening people one at a time. There was a line. The line had perhaps 400 people in it, and it was moving. And the people in it were quiet, the way people in a hospital waiting room are quiet, with the knowledge that loudness will not help them. We parked the Subaru where a soldier directed us. We got out. We took only what we could carry. Daniel had the duffel bag. I had the backpack. Daniel had the vial in his coat pocket. He had the revolver in the other pocket. He had the shotgun on a sling under his coat. And he did not draw attention to it. And no one searched us. We got in the line. The line moved. Every few minutes, the people at the front would be taken into one of the white tents, 2 at a time, and we would shuffle forward. The sun was bright. I had not noticed the sun in days. "What do you think they're doing in the tents?" I said. "Screening, temperature, pulse, looking at the eyes, looking at any wounds, looking for the early signs." "What are the early signs?" Mateo told me once that the first sign was that you stop blinking, before anything else, before the aggression, before the cognitive loss. You just stop blinking. Your brain forgets that it's something the body is supposed to do. So that is what they are looking for. They are watching the eyes. I thought about Carl. I thought about the child. I thought about how I had told myself, both times, that they had been not blinking, and how I had not understood that I was seeing the thing. We moved forward in the line. We were maybe 100 people from the front when I realized I had not seen Daniel blink in a while. I watched him. He was looking at the tent. He was not blinking. I counted. 20 seconds. 30? 40? Daniel. He blinked. He looked at me. He smiled slightly, the smaller version of the laugh from the cabin. "I was watching for symptoms," he said. "I forgot." "Don't do that." "I won't." I looked at his hand, the one that had been bandaged at the kitchen sink on Thursday morning, the one he had washed under the faucet for too long. The bandage was still there. He had changed it twice. I had watched him change it. The skin underneath had looked fine both times, a thin scratch, the kind of scratch you get from a rusted hinge or a piece of wire. "Daniel, don't." "Daniel, when did you get that cut?" "Don't, Owen. When did you get it?" He was quiet. The line moved. We shuffled forward a step. "Thursday," he said. "Where?" "In the shed. I cut it on a piece of sheet metal. It was a piece of sheet metal, Owen. I watched it happen. I know what cut me. I have been monitoring it. It is fine. I have not had a fever. I have been blinking. I am fine." "Show me." "In the tent. They will check it. They will tell us both. I would rather find out from them than from you. I would rather find out from them than from me. Let me have the tent, please." I let him have the tent. We moved forward in the line. We did not speak again until we reached the front. The medic was a young woman with very tired eyes and a name tag that said Albin. She looked at our papers, which Daniel had assembled over years and which I had not known he had. She took our temperatures. She put a small light to our eyes. She asked us when we had last eaten, when we had last slept, whether we had been bitten, whether we had been scratched. Daniel said no to both. He said it evenly. He did not look at me. She asked to see his hand. He held it out. She unwrapped the bandage with gloves on. She looked at the cut. She looked at it for a long time. She turned his hand over. She turned it back. She looked up at his face. "How did you get this?" she said. "Sheet metal, in a shed, on Thursday." "You're sure?" "Yes." "You watched it happen?" "Yes." She looked at me. "Did you watch it happen?" "No," I said. "I was inside. He came in after." She looked at the cut again. She pressed around it with a gloved finger. Daniel did not flinch. "It looks like sheet metal," she finally said. "It is not the right shape for a bite. It is not the right depth. There is no inflammation pattern consistent with what we have been seeing. I am going to clear you, both of you. But I am going to ask you to stay in the observation tent for 24 hours before you go through. That is standard. That is for everyone with any open wound, even ones that are not bites. Is that all right?" "That is all right," Daniel said. He stood up. I stood up. The medic stamped our papers. She handed them back. She looked at us, and she did something with her mouth that was almost a smile, but was not quite, and she said, "You two look like brothers." "We are," Daniel said. "Stay together," she said. "That is the only thing that has been working. The ones who come through alone do not do as well. The pairs do. The pairs do better than anything else we have seen. Stay together." "We will," I said. She nodded. She called the next people. We walked to the observation tent. It was a long white tent with cots in 2 rows, and most of the cots were occupied, and most of the people in them were sleeping, and the air smelled like antiseptic, and like the kind of exhaustion that has begun to be processed. We took 2 cots at the far end. Daniel lay down on his. I lay down on mine. We were 6 feet apart. The canvas above us moved slightly in the wind. Daniel: "Yeah. The vial. What about it? You still have it?" "I do." "Are we going to use it?" He was quiet. "I don't think we need to," he finally said. "I think we are going to be okay without it. I think we should keep it. I think we should give it to the people here. Let them study it. Let them figure out what it does. Matteo would have wanted that. He sent it to keep us alive long enough to give it to someone who could use it for more than us." "Okay. Is that your vote?" "That's my vote." "Okay then." We lay there. The wind moved the canvas. Somewhere on the field outside, a child was laughing. An actual child. An alive child. And the sound was so unexpected that I cried, briefly, into the cot. Daniel did not say anything. He reached across the gap between the cots and put his hand on my shoulder. And he kept it there until I stopped. And he did not move it for a while after. "You are a good brother," he said. "You stopped talking to me for 5 days." "Yes, I am sorry. You can make it up to me." "How?" "By not stopping again." "Okay. Promise." "I promise." We slept. For the first time in 9 days, both of us, at the same time, in the same place, under the same canvas, we slept. We made it through the corridor. We gave them the vial. They told us, 3 weeks later, that it had been a marker, the way Daniel had guessed. A compound that bound to a protein the infected expressed, that made the bearer visible to certain detection methods, that might, in combination with other things, become the basis for a test. They named the test after Matteo, who had not survived, and after the woman, Aubin, who had screened us, who had not survived either. Daniel cried when they told us. I had never seen him cry. He cried for a long time, and he let me see it. and he did not apologize for it. And I understood that we had crossed a line in our brotherhood that we were not going to uncross. We live in a small town in what used to be Quebec. Daniel teaches at a school. I work at a clinic, of all things. I am learning. He talks to me every day. I talk to him every day. We have an agreement. If either of us ever stops talking for a full day, the other one is allowed to ask why. And the answer must be honest. We have kept the agreement. It is the easiest one I have ever kept.